If I were to tell you that all mushrooms are poisonous, and that you shouldn't ever try a single one, you'd know I was overreacting. That's a stereotype, that all mushrooms are poisonous. Just a couple of species are harmful, and even fewer are fatal. But sometimes there is a justified reason to neglect that fact, and just generalize them all as poisonous. Say you and I were in a forest, and I tell you, hey, let's eat mushrooms. Well, it's safer that you say, hey, let's not. They could be poisonous. That's a prejudice, when we judge something in advance. You don't know which mushroom I'm offering, but the stereotype says they're all poisonous, and you're going to have a negative opinion towards that concrete mushroom. Hey, let's not. If you remember your high school logic class, you'll notice that this pattern is quite similar to induction and deduction. We generalize from specific cases a certain knowledge, and then we use that knowledge to draw assumptions for concrete cases. That is a natural process of drawing conclusions and using knowledge for survival or for everyday decisions. So what happens when we apply the same reasoning to a Roma person we encounter on the street? There are stereotypes about Roma stealing, being dirty, but also being musical and cheerful. Let's take a widespread one, them being dirty. Is this a justified stereotype? More than half the Roma population lives in unhygienic conditions. If we assume that there's a higher likelihood of one being dirty if one lives in dirty conditions, then the stereotype seems plausible. Prejudging that a random Roma person you meet on the street will be dirty is probably more often correct than prejudging the same thing for the non-Roma population. Induction and deduction increase the likelihood that we'll come to the correct conclusion. Most of the discussion regarding stereotypes and prejudice ends here. You can tell someone, hey, not all Roma people are dirty, or not all Roma people steal. That's a stereotype. And a person can be acutely aware of that. But our subconscious can still be guided by processes of reasoning, which are often correct enough that their negation is inefficient. After all, would you eat a randomly picked mushroom just because you know that it's most likely not poisonous? There's a big difference between a mushroom and a Roma person. A mushroom is genetically predisposed to be poisonous. When it comes to the Roma community, the stereotypes which we often find correct can be explained in one of two ways. One is that they, just like mushrooms, are genetically predisposed to be dirty thieves and nomads. The other explanation is socioeconomic factors. If you don't provide people with water or electricity, if you're reluctant to employ them and are more likely to fire them, if you call them into society only when you need a band or on the last day of school or at a wedding, naturally the stereotypes are going to remain and become even more probable, because we maintain the enchanted self-perpetuating cycle. The same principle can be applied when it comes to stereotypes about women, men, black people, or Asians. The biological differences between these groups are so small that they can't explain the great inequalities we see in society. Science reaffirms this over and over again, and the pseudo-scientific arguments for maintaining the current situation are just a cowardly escape from the reality of the problem. It isn't racist or sexist to say that there are differences among people, that much is obvious. It is racist and sexist to justify discrimination and the maintaining of the enchanted cycle with no scientific backing. The question then isn't whether you'll ignore stereotypes or suppress prejudice towards the other. The question is which stereotypes are correct and to which extent. How did we end up here? And most importantly, what are you going to do about it?